percent. Pixels are normally going to be used whenever you want to represent pixels on a device, just like you would think. Points are mainly going to be used in print media, in which 72 points is going to be roughly equal to 1 inch. You're going to see points all the time with fonts. EM is going to be equal to whatever the current font size is for your document, and percent is going to be the current font size equal to 100%. So whatever the current font size is, the percent is going to be at 100% is going to be equal to that percentage. And as we see these in examples, they're going to make a lot more sense. Another thing that I should cover is the difference between block elements and inline elements. To simplify this greatly, just think of block elements as elements that have a break statement after them. So after they go on your web page, there's going to be a break that's going to jump to the next line. And then inline elements are not going to contain those breaks. And as you can see, block quotes, bodies, breaks, statements, of course, divs, footers, H1 tags, headers, paragraphs, bodies, tables, things that are known for being quite large are all going to be block elements, which once again just means there's going to be a break. While inline elements like links, everybody knows there's links inline inside of paragraphs of other different data and so forth. Font tags, which of course would not cause a line break. Images, which also by default don't cause line breaks, and things that you would expect to show up in the body of your text without going and causing all sorts of other problems like spans are all going to be your inline elements. So your block elements are going to be like big giant boxes, while your inline elements are going to be things that just flow with the rest of the data on your screen. So there you go, covered most of the basics. Now let's say we also want to target the default ID and go and give that a background color as well, like this, and then if we reload, you're going to see exactly how those are changed. Basically just threw a border around them, and if we jump over here, we can see here is the div that I was focusing in on, and I went and gave it a color of gray right here. And then you can see for the default part, which is just this very first part inside of this div, I went and changed the background color to blue. So yes, it's possible to go in and override just parts of different elements inside of other elements. Let's say I also want to come in here and target this ID, centered. Very simple, just go centered. Let's say I want to change the background color to that. And let's say that I want to come in and change the width on that. And here we'll use 50%. And I also want to change the margin to auto, which means it's going to have an equal amount of space on the right and the left. Yes, indeed, I can do that. And you can see here is the width that I defined, which is going to be 50% of the total area that's in the enclosing parent provides for this element, and then it's going to center it thereafter. If I did text align, I could also have centered show up inside of there. And why don't we just do that? Here I'm going to target centered text like this, and then show the difference between text align and center. And reload it, and now you're going to see that that text went and centered itself. And I'm going to come over here and get rid of this and demonstrate absolute positioning. So let's get rid of all this altogether. Basically, absolute positioning is just going to be positioning based on the document itself. So I want to target a div with the name top left position, and let's say I want the background. I can use color as well and change the background color on that, and we can come in and change the border on this as well. And here we're going to position it absolutely, so we have to say that. And then we're going to define our width. Once again, top left position. Come in here and look at it. This is this guy right here, and it is a div that we're going to be positioning absolutely. We come in and define the width of it as well as the height for it. And also we can define the z-index, and the element on your page that has the highest number of set for the z-index is going to be the element that shows up on top. So let's set this to 4. And if we reload that, you can see it shows up right there. Now let's zoom in on the bottom right parent part and reposition that. So that's this guy right here, this div right here that is inside of this div that we just positioned. So if I want to change its positioning, I just go bottom right TL parent. So I'm going to move it to the top left of this parent. How do I do that? Let's change its background color again. Make sure you set the position to absolute again. And then let's say we want it to be in the bottom right hand corner. Set this to 0 pixels. And if we want it in the bottom right hand corner, we set that to 0 pixels. And reload it. And boom, you're going to see that it popped down there. Let's say that I then want to also get this div right here, top right position div, and put it in the top right corner inside of my web page. Again, just target it, top right position. And these names mean nothing, they're just names that I pulled out of a hat. And then if I want it to be positioned in the upper right hand corner, I'm going to say top, 0 pixels, and then right. Once again, 0 pixels. reload, and you're going to see that shows up there, and the Z index is the reason why this shows up on top of this item right here. Then of course I could go and target another div. Let's just copy this. In this situation it is bottom left, TR for top right parent, and then if I want to show up in the bottom left hand corner of that element, I can just do that and reload it. Well, there you can see it's parent, and you can also see how that flows. So it's a little bit messy, but I just wanted to cover that, exactly how absolute positioning works in a real bizarro way. Let's get rid of these guys, and let's talk about fixed positioning. Get rid of all of it. And fixed positioning is going to be positioning that's going to be based off of our browser. So in this situation, I'm going to target this paragraph right here, which is fixed POS. And we can go fixed dash POS. And whether the page scrolls or not, it is going to stay exactly where it is. So let's just make the position fixed on that. If we want it in the top part of the screen, we're going to have to set that to 0. Top left, again, 0. And then if we would go down from there, it would move around on the screen. We could set the width to fill up the whole entire top of the screen by making that 100%. Define a background color for that. We also want to come in and define a border. And then let's throw in a margin of 0 to make sure that it also butts up against the top of the screen, and reload. And you can see I'm staying right here, is right there, and whether I scroll it or not, it is not going to move. That's an example of fixed positioning. Talk about relative positioning, which is just going to be positioning an element relative to where it originally was on the screen. And now we're just left with relative 1 and relative 2 with some lorem ipsum here. Let's go in and target those guys. So relative 1, and there you go. There's relative layout 2, and all this other stuff. We're going to reposition all of it. Change the background color on it. Let's change the border on it. Make it black. And give it a height of 100 pixels. Well, let's just go in here and do the same sort of thing for relative 2. And in this situation, we're going to use a positioning of relative. If I want to make it go to 20 pixels to the right of where it originally was, I just type in left and 20 pixels. And then if I want to have it be 30 pixels up or down from its original, if I wanted it to be up from the original, I would say negative 30 pixels. But let's just let that be 30 or like that. Make it go down instead. So it would be 30 down from where it was. Go in and give it a width of 300 pixels. Background color, let's change this to yellow. And get rid of the height. And then look up here to how this is going to change. And there you can see relative 2 went and moved down here. There's relative layout right there. So that is how we're going to relatively move an element based off of where it originally was. This element right here was originally over here in this space right there. Another thing we can do is we can take this little brain image right here and float it to either the left or the right. And let's go in here and look for little brain. There's little brain right here. It's embedded inside of this paragraph tag. So we're going to target it by looking specifically for the source that's right there. And to do that, we can say image with a source equal to little brain ping, and say that we want those to be floated to the left. And then we could also throw in some padding of 10 pixels so that it looks a little bit neat, and reload, and you can see it fit in there real nice. Now let's take a look at clipping, and we're going to be clipping these different brain images over here on the left side or the right side of your screen. You can just see there they are. They're divs with the little images inside of them, very simple. So if we want to come in here and specifically this time we're going to be targeting classes. So you can see all these are classes that we're going to be targeting. So we're going to go div dot little brain clip. This is going to be the very first one. And let's do some positioning absolutely. Define a width on this of 100 pixels. We're going to make the width be a little bit short from what it is. And then if we want to define exactly how we're going to clip this, we're going to draw a rectangle. And we're going to define the top part of it. So we'll say 0 pixels here. So we start at the very top. Then the right, we're going to say we want to clip 50 pixels over, 50 pixels down. Again, it's going to go clockwise, just like always. And then 0 pixels for the left. Then we'll go in and focus on another one of these guys. Little brain, small. And you're also going to see over here, didn't point this out, we're going to be able to define multiple different classes inside of here just by putting class and then inside of the quotes, multiple different class names that we want to be able to edit. So for this guy, we're going to shrink the size of the div so the image isn't going to be able to fit. So let's go in and define our height of 50 pixels. And you can see the brains are slowly disappearing. I'm going to make them come back though. Here I'm going to come in and focus in on overflow visible. And whenever that's set, what this is basically saying is the part of the image that doesn't fit in the div is going to show anyway. So let's go in and do that. Div, overflow, visible. Go top 100 pixels, and then overflow, visible. And there you can see another brain pop back in. Here we can then define an overflow hidden, which is basically going to say that the hidden part isn't going to show, and define our top as 200 pixels, overflow hidden like this, and reload. And now you can see just part of it shows. And then for the final one, I'm going to show you how scroll works. Basically, it's going to hide everything, but it's going to allow you to scroll. So let's say top, let's set this to 300 pixels, and then have overflow set for scroll like that, and reload. And now you can see you can scroll through the image even though it doesn't totally appear. So it's something you might not use all the time, but wanted to cover it just to be completionist. Now let's cover some HTML5, things like using header tags and navigation tags and main and sections and all that, and combine that with some CSS3. I'm going to do first here is define some different ways that I want my links to change inside of my documents based off of events. So anytime a link is hovered over, for example, we can say that I want to change my color for that to blue. I could also come in and if it is the active link on our screen, could change the color in that situation to red. And then finally, if it has been visited, we could change the color on that to this grayish color. Another thing that I didn't cover before, if you want to put comments inside of CSS files, just put a / and a star, and whatever your comment is, and close it with a star and a /. If we want to change our body tag background color, do it that quickly, and you're going to see all the colors change there. I do, however, have a div with the name of wrapper, this guy right here. So if I want to focus in and change that so that all the background color behind everything inside of my page is going to actually show up with a value of white, I can do so here. Let's say that I also want this to be automatically centered. I just put auto inside of there for margin for my wrapper. Remember, I wanted to change my background color to white so we can read this a little bit better. And then I can also define my width for my wrapper as well as the height for my wrapper. And now you can see that reloads, and you can also see the background right there. So let's make all this other stuff a little bit neater here. So padding is used so things don't sort of butt up against each other. In the header section, which is where I have my little icon, let's say that I want this to display as a block element instead of a regular inline element like it is. I just type in display block, and then I can come in and decide that I want to put some padding inside of here. Let's just let everything be 0 and say that I want just the bottom padding to be 10 pixels. There you can see that move down. I could then go in and target the website logo that has that ID and go padding once again, 5 pixels. Remember, that's for the top, 0 pixels for the right, 0 pixels for the bottom, and then 5 pixels for the left side of the screen to make that pop off the edge. And there it did. And now let's focus in on the navigation part, which is these guys right here, these links. They have the ID of horizontal nav. So I want them to be displayed as block elements. Throw some padding inside of these guys. So they're going to be basically padding between the different links. 5 pixels bottom and 0 pixels on the left side. And then I'll throw a background color as well of black on those. See how that changed? Now I want to get rid of those underlines and make this a little bit more readable. So if I want to focus in on the underlines, well, the underlines are going to the links, not to horizontal nav. So we have to specifically target the links inside of horizontal nav to get rid of those underlines. Text decoration, change that to none. That's the underline. Let's go in and put a 20 pixels only on the left side of each one of those links so that they don't butt up against each other. There they are. If I want to change and add a hover to those links, again, target the div that surrounds them, and then link hover, and define a new text color for those situations. There you go. And if I hover over them, you can see that they change a different color of blue. And let's change this text color right here to white, so they show up a little bit better. So it's not the prettiest thing on earth, but it's getting better. Now let's focus in on the main content of our page. Throw in some padding on this guy. Let's float everything in main to the left side of the screen like we covered previously. And then let's make the width 600 pixels. I can see things are floating a little bit better. If you look over here on the right side of your screen, you're going to see sidebar items. Let's say I want those to line up a little bit better. Let's just keep those on the screen like that. I can target sidebar, throw in some padding. Let's float that to the right side of the screen. Since the main content area is floated to the left, define a width of 150 pixels to accommodate those size. let's just set our height to auto, and let's give it a different background color to make it stand out a little bit. And if we bounce over here, you can see that the sidebar item has been added in. Now let's bounce over here and see what else we can play around with. There's an H2 tag. Let's say I want to change the size of that. Of course, I can just type in H2, change font size to 1 EM. Looks a little bit nicer. Focus in on this first paragraph right here. Play around with text align and word spacing. So that again is going to be a ID. So I just put a hash symbol in there. Text align, and let's make that left. And this is either going to align the text to the left, center, or the right. And then word spacing is going to define the size of the space between our words. So let's say we change that to 0.5 EM. And watch how that changes. See how the words are more spread out? Left align isn't going to do anything because it already was a left align by default. We could go and change this to target the second paragraph and align it to the right. Get rid of the word spacing so you can see the difference. See? A little bit tighter. Go in here to paragraph 3. Text align to the center. Now that's to the center. This is to the right. See? We could also indent. So let's throw this in there for the fourth paragraph. And let's do a text indent of 2 EM. Watch this guy right here. See how it indented? We could also change letter spacing, which is going to change the space between letters. Let's do this to paragraph 5. Letter spacing. Change that to 0.5 EM. Now you can see how much bigger that is. Here we have our footer down here. If we want to make sure that nothing is going to show up next to our footer, let's go in here, type in clear. That guarantees nothing is going to butt up next to our footer. Change the background to black so that shows up a little bit better. Text color, let's change this to white. Change the padding to 10 pixels all around. Reload. There it is. Now we can play around with these different guys over here, these different list items. There are numerous different list items you can use. You can use circle, disk, lower Latin, lower Greek, upper Latin, upper Greek, square, or you could use a URL like this, and then whatever your picture name is, ping like that, and then put this inside of quotes. Let's go in here and change this. Let's target the sidebar, which is the name, sidebar list. Change the list style type, change it to lower Latin, and you can also define how the list markers should be set up inside of the list item content boxes. By default, the list item, this guy right here, is set up to be outside of the position when the list items are displayed on a screen. Here, I'll show you. List style, position, let's do outside, and then we'll do inside for the other one so that you can see the difference. Sidebar list 2 is going to be the guy underneath of it. Let's set this for inside. And then we'll change this to upper Roman just to cover something else. See? When you have it inside, that is basically, you can see that the difference between the distance there and the distance there and how that lines up. So inside, make sure that those list items are bounced inside so that they line up that way. And otherwise, if you list them as outside, they're going to be outside of the box. Something is just used for basic alignment. Another thing we can do is we can target that we want certain data to show up before elements, and so let's say for this paragraph here we wanted to put a star before the paragraph begins. We're going to say paragraph, and then para-1 is its name, and before it, if we want to slip some content inside of there, we can say content. I'm going to be using this a lot, and let's say I wanted to put a star inside of there. Now you can see the star shows up right there. I could also do a very similar thing, have it show up after any element. So again, for the paragraph, at the very end of it, if I want to slip content inside of it, let's say I want to put an @ symbol for some strange reason, and now you're going to see an @ symbol shows up right there. Another thing we could do is auto-generate numbered content. So let's say we have all these different lists right here. We want to auto-generate a number that's going to appear before those. Well, I know this guy, favorite movies, is an H3 tag. Bounce over here and just look at that. Yep, you can see this is an H3 tag, and this is an H3 tag, and these are all H4 tags. So what I'm going to do is I have these set up so that I can number them because they all share a common element type. I said I'd be covering just about everything. So here we go, H3 tag. Let's go font size, and let's make this 9 EM first. Then I have to define the name for the variable that's going to increment, and in this situation I'm going to give it the name of num, and you're going to see here in a second how this works out. I'm going to do a very similar thing for all the H4 tags. Once again, these are the H3 tags, favorite movies and others, and then these are the H4 tags, all these lists inside of there. You'll see how they number, and let's just change the font size again just so that they show up a little bit different. So 0.7 EM, I have to give it a new counter increment name, and in this one I'm going to call it sub. And let's say that I want them to increment by 2. I would do that they increment by 1 by default. I'm just doing this just to have things show up a little bit different. Then I have to actually define how they're going to work. So again, I want to target before the H3 tag, so I go before like that. And then if I want to slip content inside of there, I go content, and then I go counter like this, and then the number I want to show up inside of there. And then if I want to put space there, I can do that. And then I can do a very similar thing for the H4 tag to generate or auto-generate numbered content. Change that to H4 before. And I'm going to say number dot period right there, and then counter. And if I want to get the value, it's in sub, and then put a space after that, do that, and reload, you're going to see what it does. See? Auto-generated that 1, and then you can see that these are incrementing by 2s. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. It's just something a little bit weird that might come in handy. Another thing we can do, there are numerous what are called CSS facado classes. I'm going to show you a couple of them right here. And they basically are going to allow us to style individual weird elements. So let's come in here. Let's say inside of paragraph 2, I want to have the first letter be capitalized or larger than all the rest. I can do that. So I just have to target paragraph 2, right like this. And if I want to target the first letter, I can do so. And then I can say font size, and let's say I want it to be bigger than it is. Let's change that to 25 points. And there you can see the I grew in size. Show you a couple more of these. Let's say in paragraph 3, the first line, and this is going to be the first line. It's not going to be up until a period or anything. Let's say I want this to be set to a background color of yellow.